so you don't get girls. Let's just get that out of the way. You see them, you might even talk to them, but something just isn't clicking. You watch your friends, even the ones you secretly think are kind of jerks, succeed where you fail. You've probably scrolled through endless articles and forums, each one offering conflicting advice. Be nice. One screams, no, be an alpha. Another one yells, it's a confusing, frustrating, and frankly demoralizing experience. You start to wonder if you're just broken. If you're missing some secret handshake or a genetic cheat code that everyone else was born with, fear not. I'm here to help, but I'm not going to give you a list of cheesy pickup lines or tell you to just be confident, as if that's a switch you can just flip. No, we're going to approach this with a different kind of power. We're going to use the power of science. We're diving deep into the architecture of human attraction, pulling from decades of research in psychology, sociology, and even neurobiology. By the time we're done, I'm going to make you the reincarnated male version of Regina freaking George effortlessly magnetic. The one people are drawn to, not because you're mean, but because you understand the game better than anyone else. So, grab a notebook, silence your notifications, and let's begin. Our first lesson is perhaps the most counterintuitive and the most powerful concept in the entire arsenal of attraction, the scarcity principle. The brilliant psychologist Dr. Robert Cialdini, in his seminal book Influence, laid out a fundamental law of human behavior. Opportunities seem more valuable to us when their availability is limited. This isn't just a neat theory. It's the invisible engine driving a huge portion of our modern world. We see it constantly in marketing. It's the reason a billionaire would shell out millions for a clunky, slow, one-of-a-kind vintage car, while ignoring a technologically superior, insanely fast sports car that's still in mass production. Why? Because one is unique, a treasure that cannot be easily obtained. The other is just a commodity. It's the limited edition sneaker drop that has people camping out on sidewalks. It's the only 3 left in stock. Warning on an Amazon page that makes your heart beat a little faster and your finger twitch towards the buy now button. Scarcity creates an urgent, almost primal desire. We are hardwired to believe that what is rare is valuable. And what is abundant is cheap. Now, let's apply this to the world of dating. This principle is the hidden reason behind one of the most frustrating and misunderstood adages you've ever heard. Nice guys finish last. For years. You've been told this, and for years you've probably seen evidence that most of the time it's painfully true. But here's the twist everyone gets wrong. It's not because girls don't like nice guys. Of course they do. Who wants to be with someone who is genuinely cruel or disrespectful? The problem isn't the niceness. It's the availability. The stereotypical nice guy makes himself completely, utterly, and readily available. He's the one who instantly replies to every text, who drops all his plans the second she suggests hanging out, who showers her with compliments and attention before he's earned any right to. He essentially puts a giant, flashing, all-you-can-eat buffet sign over his head. He is abundant. He is a commodity. The jerk, on the other hand, operates differently. He doesn't really care. He's busy with his own life, his own hobbies, his own priorities. He might not text back for hours or even days, not as a calculated move, but because he's genuinely occupied. His attention is a finite resource. Subsequently, his availability is limited. And through the lens of Dr. Cialdini's principle, he is perceived as a more valuable opportunity. He is the limited edition. But here's the secret that they don't tell you. The piece of the puzzle that can change everything. You do not have to be a jerk to be scarce. In fact, a genuinely nice guy who understands and displays the principles of scarcity is such a rare and potent combination that, by Cialdini's own logic, he should be 10 times more attractive than your average run-of-the-mill jerk. He's a unicorn dot, so how do you actually do this? How do you weaponize scarcity while still being a good person? Let's paint a picture. Imagine you're at a party. You see a girl you're interested in, and She's holding court, surrounded by a swarm of dudes all vying for her attention. They're leaning in, laughing too loudly at her jokes, practically tripping over each other to get her another drink. This is her gremlin gang, her swarm of simps. Your first instinct might be to think you don't stand a chance. How can you possibly compete with all that? But in reality, you have the ultimate advantage. You are the only one who can be different. So you walk over to her and her entourage. But you don't stop, you walk past them. And just as you pass, you make brief eye contact with her, offer a small, genuine, friendly smile, and say a simple hi. Then you keep walking. You go find your friend across the room and start a conversation. Bonus points if that friend is a girl, not for any reason of jealousy, but because it shows you have a life and social circle outside of your pursuit of a romantic partner. What have you just done? That simple act of saying hi and then doing nothing. Else is the social equivalent of hanging a limited edition sign around your neck. You've acknowledged her existence, shown you're friendly and confident, but you haven't begged for her attention. You haven't joined the buffet line. You've demonstrated that you are not readily available like the other boys in her orbit. You are something different, something that needs to be pursued or potentially lost forever. You've planted a seed of curiosity. Who was that? Why didn't he stop? You've just become the most interesting man in the room, not by being the loudest, but by being the most scarce. This simple, powerful act sets the stage for our next lesson, which builds directly on this foundation. This brings us to the gain-loss theory of attraction, a concept that adds a fascinating layer of complexity to the scarcity principle. It helps explain in greater detail why the nice guy approach can sometimes backfire, and why a little initial friction can lead to a much stronger connection. A clever and revealing study was conducted to test this very theory. Researchers had volunteer college students participate in a series of one-on-one meetings with an experimenter. After each meeting, through a seemingly accidental setup, the volunteer would overhear the experimenter describing them in one of four distinct ways. Entirely positive, entirely negative, initially negative but gradually becoming positive, or initially positive but gradually becoming negative. Later, the volunteers were asked to rate how much they liked the experimenter. As you'd expect, they liked the person who said consistently positive things about them. No surprise there. But here's the kicker. They liked the experiment even more when the evaluation was initially negative, but then became positive. This finding is profound. It supports the idea that winning someone over who had an initial bad or indifferent impression of us is significantly more rewarding than having the approval of someone who liked us from the very beginning. There's a sense of accomplishment, of having earned a respect and affection. It feels more genuine, more meaningful. Think about it in your own life. The compliment from a close friend is nice, but a compliment from a tough critic or a respected rival, that feels like a victory. It validates us on a much deeper level. The person whose opinion we had to work for becomes more valuable in our eyes. However, you need to tread very, very carefully if you're trying to apply this theory in the real world. This is not a license to be a jerk. Trying to demonstrate that someone has left a bad impression on you can be incredibly difficult to pull off without just seeming rude or arrogant, which will backfire spectacularly. The key is subtlety. You can achieve this not through your words, but through your tone and body language. Maybe in your first interaction, you're a bit more reserved, a little less smiley. You're polite, but not overly enthusiastic. Your body language is neutral, not closed off, but not wide open and inviting either. You're giving them a puzzle to solve. Then, as you interact more, you slowly warm up. You let a bigger smile slip through. You make more direct eye contact. You lean in when they speak. You are showing them non-verbally that they are winning you over. This gradual shift is crucial. But equally crucial is the gain part of the theory. Once you have decided that they've won you over, you must convey that shift clearly and unambiguously. If your change of heart is too subtle, if it's not clear to the girl that you now like her, she won't see it as a rewarding victory. She'd just think you don't like her. Period. And if someone thinks you don't like them, they're not going to want to be around you. That's just human nature. This creates a huge problem, a disconnect that can kill any potential attraction. You've created the scarcity, you've laid the groundwork for the gain-loss effect, but none of it matters if you're not even in her orbit. And that leads us directly to our next critically important lesson. In our first lesson, I told you that you need to be scarce. But it is absolutely vital to understand the distinction between being scarce with your attention and being scarce with your physical presence. You need to be scarce in terms of validation, not proximity. This is where the principle of proximity comes into play, and it's a non-negotiable pillar of attraction. A landmark study on friendship formation conducted at MIT provides the clearest evidence for this. Researchers surveyed nearly 300 dormitory residents, asking them to list their closest friends within the dorms. They then mapped out where these listed friends lived in relation to each other. The results were staggering. When someone lived just one door away, there was a 41% probability that they would be listed as a close friend. As the number of doors between them increased, that likelihood plummeted. For those living just 4 doors away, the probability of being listed as a close friend dropped to a mere 10%. The lesson is simple and undeniable. Out of sight, out of mind. You need to be physically near the girl you like for any kind of relationship to blossom. But good proximity isn't just about sharing a mutual geographical location. It's also, and perhaps more importantly, about the frequency of your interactions. For example, you have a significantly better chance of building a connection with a girl you see for 10 minutes every single day than you do with a girl you see for 1 solid hour only once a week. It's the consistent, repeated exposure that builds familiarity, comfort, and ultimately, attraction. This is known as the mere exposure effect. The more we are exposed to something, the more we tend to like it. If you don't have good, natural proximity with the person you're interested in, you stand almost no chance. It's a harsh truth. In such a case, you have to take matters into your own hands and create that proximity artificially. But I cannot stress this enough. You must be subtle about it. This is where strategy comes in. Does she always study in a particular corner of the library on Tuesday afternoons? Maybe that's a good time for you to study there too. Is she a member of the university's hiking club? Perhaps you've suddenly developed a keen interest in the great outdoors. Change your route to class so you pass by her usual spot. Do what you need to do to increase the frequency of your passive encounters. But please, for the love of all that is good, do not be creepy. There is a razor-thin line between strategically creating proximity and stalking, and you must not cross that line. Stalking is about obsession and intrusion. Creating proximity is about subtly placing yourself on her map so that natural, organic interactions have a chance to occur. One is terrifying, the other is smart. So let's say you've done it. You have good proximity. You've used the scarcity principle to make yourself seem like a valuable opportunity. You've subtly navigated the gain-loss theory, making her feel like she's earned your positive regard. How do you solidify and grow those positive feelings? How do you make yourself not just interesting, but genuinely likable? This is where a wonderfully counterintuitive psychological trick comes into play. This brings us to the Ben Franklin effect, a psychological phenomenon named after one of America's most beloved founding fathers. Ben Franklin had a secret to being so well liked and respected by almost everyone he knew, even his political rivals. His secret wasn't that he did favors for everyone. It was that he asked everyone for favors. Now, your initial thought might be that asking people for favors would make them dislike you. After all, you're burdening them, you're taking up their time and energy. But the psychological reality is quite the opposite. When we do a favor for someone, our brain performs a little mental gymnastics to resolve cognitive dissonance. Our brain thinks, I just did something nice for this person. I don't do nice things for people I dislike. Therefore, I must like this person. The act of kindness justifies itself by creating a positive feeling toward the recipient. A fascinating study conducted in 1971 at the University of North Carolina put this theory to the test. Volunteers were tasked with administering tests to actors who were pretending to be other students. The volunteers were the real subjects of the study. They just didn't know it. They were instructed to have the students use sticks to tap out long, complex patterns on wooden cubes and then repeat them. The volunteers were told to use 2 different methods on 2 different groups. In one group, they were instructed to give encouragement and praise whenever the student got a pattern right. In a separate group, they were told to insult and criticize the students whenever they made a mistake. Afterwards, the volunteers filled out a debriefing questionnaire that included questions about how attractive and likable they found the students to be. The results were conclusive. Across the board, the students who had received the insults were rated as significantly less attractive and likable than the students who had received encouragement. The conclusion is clear. When you do something kind to someone else, you end up liking them more. So, your job is to give the girl you like the opportunity to be kind to you. You need to create small, low-stakes situations where she can do you a favor. This isn't about asking her to help you move or co-sign a loan. It's about the little things. Ask for the time. Accidentally drop your pencil in her direction and see if she picks it up for you. If you're working on something near her, ask for her opinion. Hey, does this sound right to you? Or, can you watch my laptop for just a second while I grab a coffee? Stupid little stuff like this actually works. Each time she performs one of these small acts of kindness, she is, on a subconscious level, reinforcing the idea in her own mind that you're someone worth helping, someone she likes. It's a subtle but incredibly effective way to make yourself more attractive as a human being. You're not just an object of her interest anymore. You're becoming a part of her social fabric, someone she has a small positive investment in. However, everything we have discussed up to this point, scarcity, gain loss, proximity, the Ben Franklin effect, all of it becomes completely and utterly meaningless if you disregard this next, possibly most important truth. Let's talk about the Discord mod effect. This isn't a formal psychological term, but it's a perfect descriptor for a critical reality. In 1997, a study by researchers Mori and Blum reached a very interesting and, for many, a very reassuring conclusion. The 2 researchers surveyed 117 male and female college students, showing them 76 different photos of people from the opposite sex. The participants were asked to rank each photo based on attractiveness and their emotional response to the person pictured. The study concluded that the features people found most attractive were not, as many would assume, purely genetic traits like a perfectly symmetrical face or a certain height. Instead, the most attractive features came down to things that are almost entirely within an individual's control. Good posture, noticeable grooming, nice-fitting clothing, a seemingly positive attitude conveyed through expression, and a healthy weight. Let me repeat that, because it's the most important sentence you might hear all day. The most attractive features are not genetic. This is not about winning the genetic lottery. This is about effort. If you put a little bit of conscious effort into your presentation, the results can be transformative. Exercise regularly. You don't need to be a bodybuilder, but being physically active demonstrates discipline and self-respect. Keep your chin up and your shoulders back. Good posture signals confidence to the world before you even say a word. Shower daily. This should be non-negotiable. Wear clothes that fit you well and are clean and unwrinkled. You don't need expensive designer brands, just clothes that show you care about how you present yourself. And finally, put a smile on your face. A genuine warm smile is one of the most powerful tools of attraction you possess. If you do all of these things, maybe, just maybe, girls won't be physically repelled by you when you walk into a room. You can master every psychological trick in the book. You can be the scarcest, most mysterious man on the planet. But if you look like you just rolled out of a 3-day gaming binge in your mom's basement, if you look like a stereotypical Discord modder, she won't want you. Your physical presentation is the cover of your book. If the cover is stained, torn, and unappealing, No one is going to bother to read the story inside, no matter how brilliant it might be. This is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Neglect it, and the entire structure will collapse. And that brings us to the finale. The last lesson? You've done everything right. You've curated your image, mastered the dance of social dynamics, and built a genuine connection. But there's one final formidable gatekeeper that stands between you and a real romantic connection. And this is where we have to accept that some things are simply out of our control. This is the lesson of luck, or more accurately, the lesson of biology, believe it or not. After all this work, it will almost always come down to a matter of raw, unchangeable genetic compatibility. So let's step away from the world of psychology for a moment and talk about neurobiology. Two major biological factors play a part in ultimately determining long-term, deep-seated attraction. And both of them have absolute veto power over pretty much everything else we've discussed. That the first component is your nose, or more specifically, what your nose detects. Your nose is a sophisticated chemical sensor, and one of the things it's constantly, subconsciously scanning for are pheromones. These are chemical signals that carry a wealth of physical and genetic information about a person. When detected, they can activate a powerful physiological or behavioral response in another person. If your pheromones are compatible with hers, it's a green light from her ancient reptilian brain. But even if they are, a woman's sense of smell functions on an even more complex level. While they do take in pheromones, their noses are also exquisitely attuned to something called MHC molecules, which stands for major histocompatibility complex. These molecules are proteins on the surface of cells that our immune system uses to identify foreign invaders and fight disease. And in this particular situation, opposites really do attract. A famous study had a group of women smell t-shirts that had been worn by different men for a couple of days. The study showed with remarkable consistency that women almost always preferred the odors of men whose MHC molecules were most different from their own. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes perfect sense. Mating with someone who has a different set of immune system genes gives your offspring a much wider range of immunities. A huge survival advantage that protects them from a greater variety of diseases. Unfortunately for us boys, we don't have that same finely tuned MH sensing ability. This means that from our perspective, we might think we found a perfect match. She's beautiful, funny, smart. We have great conversations. But if your MH molecules are too similar to hers, her brain might be screaming, he's basically your cousin. It can create a biological barrier, making it incredibly difficult for her to feel a genuine romantic attraction to you, no matter how much she might like you as a person. It's a brutal, invisible filter that we have no control over. But there is one final test, one last critical moment that can make or break everything. This is the second and possibly most important biological component of attraction. The first kiss. A first kiss is not just a romantic gesture. It is a huge, complex, and incredibly intimate exchange of tactile and chemical cues. It's a final, close-range data transfer. Through the smell of your breath and the taste of your mouth, her brain is conducting a final, high-stakes chemical analysis. This moment is so critical, so packed with biological information, that a majority of women have reported completely losing their attraction to someone after a bad first kiss. It could be the way it felt, the way you tasted, or some subconscious chemical signal that just screamed, no. It's the ultimate compatibility test. But if things do go well, if your pheromones align, if your MHC molecules are different enough, and if that first kiss sends the right signals, then something magical happens. Her nervous system lights up. It pumps out a cocktail of powerful neurochemicals. Norepinephrine floods her system, activating the fight-or-flight response in a good way. Her heart beats faster. Her pupils dilate. A surge of energy courses through her. In that moment, after all the psychology, all the strategy, and all the biology aligns in a perfect, beautiful symphony. In that case, fellas, you're in